Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be continuing our discussion on domestic violence awareness, and today I'll be talking with Stacey Miller from Stacey Miller Consultancy in the UK. Stacey brings an interesting perspective on domestic violence awareness and how she works with youth particularly in helping them become more aware of the prevalence of domestic violence and how she helps them to work through a lot of the issues. So if you're interested in seeing what she has to say, stick around.
Card for a parking problem.
Before you're 23.
Yes, that's for I'll get a 28 from one truck when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Here's the one truck, Boy Lincoln X-ray 985 should come back up next slowly.
So you had 2000 Patrick Spalding.
10-4. If you can just put a little note on the log that I'm going to be leaving a note on his vehicle advising him to remove it.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Right, so I'm just sorting it out. Hello, lovely lady. How are you? Hi, Crystal.
I'm good. How are you?
All right, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Did you manage to get through all your speakers? There were so many people that messaged you.
Yeah, I'm still working through it. I have, I think I've got about 25 more people that I need to.
Wow.
Yeah, I had, I mean, it sucks. It really does, that there were so many people that really, felt they needed to talk. But it's also, I think, important that, we really get the message out there. This is a big
Yeah.
problem, and, it needs to be recognized, and more people need to focus on it and pay attention to what's going on. So,
Couldn't agree more. I think especially with the whole pandemic, it baffles me. So I don't know what the statistics are in your country, but in our country we have 2 women a week that are murdered by their partner or ex-partner, and that statistic is pre-COVID. So when I tell my friends and family that statistic, they're like, what? Like, what is going on? Why are we not doing more about this? Why do we not know that? So yeah, it's scary stuff, I think. So I think, yeah, bring on the awareness raising, Crystal. I think
yeah.
it's a great idea what you're doing. You're just going to be very busy.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It ended up being a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. I was like, oh, I'll just, get 2 people and, that'll be good. But now it's like, okay, well, I have enough for pretty much 1 person every single day. So,
Well, thank you for having me on, because I'm a little bit like different, I'd say. So like when you speak, so I noticed there's a bit of a running theme through people commenting saying, I have real like lived experience, lots of trauma. And I'm going to sound heartless now, and I don't mean to be. I think that's mega important, and I think it's so important to get people different perspectives. Someone from like a perpetrator, or someone for me, like I am so into prevention, because I just think once you're in it, it's so hard to leave. You're more risk of murder when you leave. So, the impact of trauma affects you for the rest of your life. So if we know all that, then we should be trying to prevent it, surely. Yeah.
right.
Not a lot of people talk about prevention. That's why I was like, yay, she's going to let me talk about it.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, I really want to talk about. So, what I do is I teach mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Yeah,
And
lovely.
my target audience is victims of abuse. And one of the things that I try to do for people is I try to have people, and you know, not just victims, but people who are outside, practicing mindfulness and being aware of what's going on and paying attention. And that's, you know, the whole part of the whole point of mindfulness is paying attention.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're really paying attention, the signs are completely obvious.
Yes.
And they're so easy to pick up. And it's so easy to say, you know, like, I see something is going on.
Yeah.
And you know, I really want to help you. And that's, I think, a big problem with a lot of people who are stuck in abusive relationships is they don't know who to turn to, or they're so ashamed of what's going on that they don't feel like they have it in them to ask for help, or they're afraid that if they do ask for help, that, you know, it's going to lead to, you know, even worse abuse, or you know, yeah, I mean, there's so many issues that, you know, I think we could really work.
They don't recognise it's abuse as well. I've got quite a few of my friends that are like, you know, the whole gaslighting thing, where it's like, you know, proper psychological. And you know, and I happen to be really careful because I think they probably think I'm just being opinionated and I'm a bit out there. But I'm like, is that okay for him to say that? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, is it? You know, because obviously the more you battle that, the more the abuser tries to isolate their partner from their friends, don't they? You know, so, you know, it's a fine line of education, but also not getting too involved, because you know that your friend will be isolated and then you're not going to be able to see them, for example.
Right. It's hard. So, you know, as someone I was abused as a child. And then growing up, I ended up in abusive relationships. And then I figured out what was going on and, you know, how to change things in my life. But now it's like, you know, I talked to someone yesterday and she, you know, stated it so succinctly, which was really nice. You know, you see people that are in abusive relationships and it's the whole, like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink kind of. Like, you can just say, hey, you know, I see you and I recognize you and I'm here for you, but I can't help you unless you ask me, you know? So like, I have a sister who was in a really bad abusive relationship, and I tried for years to tell her, like, you're doing it wrong, nothing's going to change. And she just, you know, the more you tell someone, the more they resist, because we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to admit to ourselves that we made a mistake or that we picked the wrong partner, because that would make us flawed. And we try really hard not to be flawed people. And, you know, makes that even more difficult.
Yeah, I know. If someone tells me all the time, oh, you need to stop eating so much, it makes me want to eat loads.
Like, I'll show you, like, this isn't what I'm doing, you know, and that can, you know, really cause a lot more harm than good. So, you know, I've learned over the years how to, you know, shift the way I'm talking to people and how to get them to change their perspectives. And, you know, I really like to talk to you you know, because you work more with prevention than anything. So, you know, I would really like to just kind of pick your brain and hear your thoughts and ideas about different ways that people can go about, you know, preventing domestic abuse.
I know. I think it's really nice that you're up for talking about it, because often when I go to multi-agency meetings, you know, it's very doom and gloom, and to me it just screams out for me prevention, because obviously once you're in it, it's really hard to leave, isn't it? Once you're in an abusive relationship, especially if there's children, you know, the risk of murder is massively increased when you try to leave. And how many attempts are there, I think, of leaving before actually someone does properly? It's, I think, about 50, something like that in this country. That's crazy. So it constantly tells me, what can we do to prevent it? And so I've done lots of work, mainly with young people, because I think, let's not wait until we're a lot older and we're set in our ways a little bit. Let's try, because young people are so, like, moldable with the right input and the right guidance. They can do extremely well, and they're much more open to change as well, because they're just trying to work out who they are. So in my previous jobs, and I still do now, I always love working with young people to give them a voice on whatever it is, whether we do stuff around mental health, whether it's about substance misuse, and then always domestic abuse as well. So I worked with a bunch of young people. I managed an alcohol project in Hampshire, which is in the south of England on the coast. And I kept saying to young people, you know, what do you think we should do about domestic abuse? And they didn't really obviously know really what it was. So I was working with sort of young people from sort of 14 to sort of 17 age, that kind of age. So I said, why don't you come along and I'll do a workshop with you that I would do with professionals. So I often do training for professionals on domestic abuse. So I work with police, I work with like youth workers, teachers, local authority, health, and NHS workers, nurses, doctors. So I did that and they just said, why isn't more being done? And I was like, well, I think because there's maybe a lack of awareness, but also, you know, thinking about the things that potentially abusers do, you know, are we not aware of that that's not healthy? So for me personally, I've been in a few, sadly, abusive relationships, none physical, but which is harder, isn't it? I think the psychological, because obviously you can't see it. You can't see it. And for me personally, I think that could be more damaging as well. So, and they can prey on your little insecurities or your vulnerabilities. And also as well, I was speaking to someone earlier about the kind of perpetrator typology where they're not the same person. So like every single perpetrator that I've ever talked about, with whether it's personally or professionally, is very different. There's not a one size fits all, is it, you know? So the young people I was speaking to, they just said, well, why are people not more aware of what we call the red flags, those warning signs? So I was like, well, what are those red flags and those warning signs? So basically, we really focused on that because we were looking in England, you know, what's being done out there, what are the projects? And typically, especially at most countries, but England, we're very reactive. You know, let's wait till it's a big problem and then we'll try and sort it out. And that's harder to do because there's a lot of damage there. So for example, with someone mental health, it's the same. You know, if you've had a breakdown, trying to recover from that is not going to take you a few weeks. You know, potentially that can affect you for the rest of your life. It's the same with the impact of trauma and domestic abuse. So let's prevent it so that person hasn't got to go through all that. So me and the young people, we decided to do a video. So we worked with a lovely charity in England called Fixers, and they basically are just like me. They want to give young people a voice about whatever they think is important. So me and these young people, we decided to act in it and also write it as well. So, and then we worked with the Fixers team who had all the film crew and everything. And we did basically sort of like scenarios of a situation, loads of different scenarios. That might be a couple at a party and he's putting her down a little bit about the music choice that she liked at the party. And we were like, and then it would pause. It would do like a little screenshot pause. And it would say, is he having fun or is he belittling her? And then it would be, you know, let's stop the DVD because it's only like a 3-minute DVD. But if you kept pausing it, then you would have a conversation with the young people. So me and the young people, we did this film. So the film was about 3.5 minutes long to spot the signs. And then we wrote a lesson plan to go with it. So then people would feel confident about how to talk about it, especially with a teacher, because a teacher is a teacher of, say, maths or English. They're not an expert, are they? So we would like try and give them loads of different guidance. So that was one project. The other project I did was really similar. Was we have police and crime commissioners in England who basically are the top dog that fund all the criminal justice agencies, particularly with the police. Some of them in this country have what they call a youth commission. Not all of them. I think it's about 20 districts have a youth commission where it's a bunch of young people that represent other young people and have a voice about whatever it might be. So it might be in this country, we've got someone talking about serious violence, county lines, which I don't know if it's a term where you live, but it's about exploitation of young people criminally with drugs, like drug running. So we have people do that. So I train those young people up, which is amazing, because I want to guide them to do the right thing. I don't want them to be doing projects that already are out there, because there's no point. I don't want them doing a project that I know that hasn't worked, you know, so I'm trying to encourage them to do good practice. And again, they are so on par with me. They're always saying more needs to be done around raising awareness of what the warning signs, basically. So they did a Raise a Flag campaign, they called it. And it was basically raising awareness of warning signs. So is that person texting you quite a bit, asking you who you're hanging out with? If you haven't replied back within a couple of hours, have they texted you again to just say, oh, did you not get my message? Because they're little things that we're not really aware of, because they're not horrendous, are they? They're not like, you know, he's not telling you you're a fat twat that needs to lose weight, you know, because that's really obvious. It's those little things of, oh, okay, so what are you up to later? Oh, right, so how do you know that guy then? Have you been out with him before? You know, and it just makes you think. And that's one thing that's great, what I noticed about you, was you were saying that your mindfulness stuff. Because when we're an autopilot, we don't notice those things. You know, they just go way overhead. We get wrapped up in the moment. We're having a lovely time. We feel all giddy with love.
Or we're too busy doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Obsessed with phones. You're so right. Especially, I mean, adults aren't great, are they? But young people, like, you know, that would be the next training I'd probably have to do in a couple of years, is phone addiction. You know, that dopamine rush of the likes that we get and stuff like that. So it was really obvious for us that we needed to do more of that. And we've been doing lots of feedback with other young people to say, has it made you think? You know, and really, probably without realising it, we've asked them to be more mindful, which is kind of what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, it's really important just to be a bit more aware of it. I think now, because of my job and because I always promote it, I'm really aware of it.
Yeah.
Probably too much. But I'd rather be like that than not at all, you know?
I know, and I think a huge problem, the awareness. And then not only the awareness of it, but then feeling empowered. So, you know, a lot of people, have you ever seen the show? It was, you know, really popular over here, like the What Would You Do show, you know, where they have like, it's a setup basically. So they have people that are like in a restaurant and they're fighting, and someone does something wrong, and then there's a person. So like the people that are fighting it's a setup, right? Like they're doing
they're actors, yeah,
to kind of see what people would do in the situation. So there's like people on the street, and someone shoves someone, and they wanted to see what passerby are going to do. You know, like, is somebody going to step in and help? Is someone
bystander effect, probably. Yeah, that's interesting.
And it's amazing how many people just completely ignore the situation.
Yeah,
going. You know, it's like the bystander effect. You know, if I don't say something, someone else will. So I'm just going to go and like leave it to someone else to do. And I think we really need to empower a lot of people to say, hey, you know, if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility. Like we don't want to take personal responsibility for being wrong about the situation, or for, you know, reading the situation wrong or stepping in and maybe getting hurt. So like me personally, when I was in high school, I got in a fight with the captain of the football team because he was abusing his girlfriend in the hallway in front of everybody.
Really?
And everyone was just laughing. Like it was the coolest thing ever. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Are you guys crazy? Like
conforming. Yeah.
It was just insane. I couldn't believe it. I mean, literally, I could not believe it. And then nobody was saying anything. And I was like, you guys have got to be kidding me. And, you know, it happens a lot. You know, it happens so much where people are just like, you know, give that bitch what she's asking for. She deserves it. I don't care what anybody did.
Oh, no. You're what we call a defender then, Crystal. I don't know if you've ever looked into like roles and bullying. So I do a lot of work with young people around bullying, and there's loads of different roles. You've got like your reinforcer, you've got your ringleader, you've got most of them, I think, 80%, something like that, are bystanders that either don't notice or just see it and let it go. And you have a really tiny percentage of defenders who are the people we need more of, but we don't have them because they're normally scared, basically.
Right.
But
So, in your professional opinion, how do you think we can get people to go from being bystanders to being defenders?
right, that's a really good question. I've actually done a little bit of work on that a couple of years ago. So when I was at school, I was definitely a defender, without a doubt. But that was because I was mega confident and because I had a really good reputation for being like badass and hard. So when I got bullied quite a lot when I was sort of like going into senior school. And I remember my parents sat me down and just said, right, you have got to kick ass, because if you don't, you are going to get walked on for probably the rest of your life. And I was like, rest of my life? Are you joking? Because obviously you don't see it like that when you're a kid. And they just basically like gave me some really practical tips for being assertive, which you don't get really, do you, from school, or you kind of learn it really. You just learn it as you get older. That's actually if you do learn it, because a lot of people don't learn it. So I do think personally, first of all, we need to make sure people realise that it's not about endangering yourself. So when I talk to young people about being the defender, whether it's with bullying, whether it's with domestic abuse, it's not about putting yourself in danger ever, because that's not what we want. So that's normally the first message I say, that it's not about putting yourself in danger. It's just about like maybe just literally just tiny little things. So like, for example, when we have friends and family, and I've got plenty of them sadly at the moment that are in abusive relationships, and my natural reaction is to go in guns blazing. My natural reaction is to go to the abuser, tell him what a douche he is, you know. But I know that would make things so much worse. Even though I want to do that, I know that it wouldn't work. So being a good defender is literally just keep making an effort, even though it seems like they don't care. It's letting them know little things like, and it's the same with mental health, it's texting that person and saying, how you doing today? Like, and not always talking about the relationship, because they're sick to death of it. And in fact, if you talk about it, it puts that barrier up, doesn't it? It's about creating a relationship. So I've got a friend at the moment, and I'll be really honest, from my perspective, I do struggle, because she's been with him for 12 years. I feel like she probably will be with him for the rest of her life, sadly. You've got children now, and everything's just so much harder, isn't it? More you're with that person. But I just think if it was me, I would want someone not to give up. So, okay, I don't make loads and loads of effort with her because I have to protect my own self-care.
Right.
That's important too. However, I've got to put myself in her shoes. I would want someone to message me. Like, I just do it every couple of weeks, and it might even be literally like, I've found she loves personal development and personal growth. She's really interested in that. Me too. So if I find someone on Instagram that is really into that, that's my little excuse to message her and just say, hey, how you doing? You need to follow this person on Instagram. They're awesome. And then we'll have a little chat, you know? And because as well that I'm like that with her partner lets her come to my house now and again for like lunch. Not very often, but that's better than what he does with our other friends. Bearing in mind, he doesn't like me that much because I'm a very like strong, opinionated woman. You know, he hates me really. But because I'm so nice, even though inside I'm not, he hasn't really got a choice. You know, so it's that keeping your enemies close thing, isn't it? You know, so I think a lot of it is about building relationships and not underestimating little things that you can do. You know, because she may, and I don't know this as a fact, but for example, with my friend, she may have not had one friend message her all week because they can't be bothered. You know, what's the point? You know, and I sometimes feel like that, but because I know a lot about it because of my job, I always say to my friends, like, just drop her a text. Like, that's not really going to do any harm, is it? And they're like, what's the point? And I'm like, don't give up. You wouldn't want to be given up on if it was you, you know, because it's isolating enough as it is, isn't it? It only gets, well, what domestic abuse relationship gets better as you get older? I don't know, anything get better. And I don't want to be negative here, Crystal, because I try not to be, but it doesn't. only gets worse, you know. And at the end of the day, a lot of these relationships do end up, you know, dead, which is just bloody awful. And then you've got to think about those children, you know. So I'm trying to keep them safe as well. So I had a cousin who was in an abusive relationship, and he isolated everyone from the family. And I thought, how can I get her to see it? Because she could not see it. So I was like, why don't you do some voluntary work with me? I was a drugs recovery worker at the time. And I knew that if she became a volunteer and went on the training, safeguarding training, the penny would drop. And it wouldn't be coming from me directly, you know. And it did, it worked. You know, eventually she then got a paid job and got confidence. And it took a few years, but she, you know, she managed to get free from him, basically, because he was like, oh, you're becoming so egotistical now that you have a job. It's like, really? But luckily the job gave her oozes of confidence to not be like that. So, you know, it was really, really good for her. So it's little things, I think, Crystal. I think sometimes we overanalyze things a bit, and we think, oh, we've got to be this expert. No, you know, when you look at what people really value in, say, a therapist, it's not all the fancy tools they tell you about. It's being listened to and not being judged.
Yeah.
And that's it, really. You know, don't you think? It's not loads of things. It's the same with mental health. It's the same with drugs. There's a lot of stigma. So let's try and get rid of a bit of that stigma, and just remind people that you're there for them. And it's just being a nice human.
Yeah, it is.
We need more of that.
A lot of people, they let people like that go because, you know, they think it's just a lot of work trying to maintain a relationship with someone who's in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's their lifeline. And it's not even just people that are in abusive relationships. It's people who are suffering from depression. Like I totally get, you know, that talking to someone who's in severe depression is so difficult. And I know a lot of abusive relationships end up, you know, the people that are the abused people end up being serious substance abusers, or they suffer from severe depression because of the abuse. And, you know, it's a struggle sometimes dealing with them because it's like pulling teeth to get a conversation out of them. But if we just give up on them, then that just pushes them even further into despair, because then they're like, nobody cares except the bottle or the Valium or whatever, you know. So it's like, if no one else cares, why should I care? And I'm just going to drown my sorrows and whatever. And
and then that gives them ammunition for the abuser again. So I've had it with a friend where she's got addicted to prescribed pills, you know, and he's encouraging that. And I thought, I bet he's encouraging that, because obviously then that makes her weak, doesn't it? Or what he thinks is weak. And then again, if she decides to leave, he'll be like, well, I'll tell children's services that you're addicted to Valium and that you need that to function all day. And then you're going to have your children taken away. And then you just go back to square one, don't you? So, you know, it can get ugly. It really can.
It can. And so it's funny, you know, listening to everything that you're saying, one of the things that kind of stuck out for me was, you know, that your parents taught you to be assertive.
Yeah.
Which for women is not the norm.
No.
Most women are trained to be, you know, women they're seen but not heard. They don't mind, you know, you be quiet, you do
what you're told.
Just kind of, you know, stay meek and mild, and, you know, don't be assertive, and, you know, you can't be dominant. Like there's, you know, if you and then society kind of, you know, reinforces that with, like, if you are an assertive person, instead of being assertive, you're a bitch, you know. And just like they have all these things that they call people because, you know, women that, you know, try to be assertive or try to be strong, you know, you get called all kinds of names.
You can't win.
Yeah, it's crazy. You
I
know,
tell you what as well, thinking about the prevention thing again, so you've made me think about the assertive thing. So my cousin's daughter, I mean, she's 18 now, but throughout when she was growing up, she had not many protective factors in her life. And I thought, oh, she's just going to be like her mum. You know, dad wasn't around, lots of controlling family members. And I thought, you know, what do I think could prevent this in her? You know, fingers crossed. And it was trying to teach her assertive techniques that we've just said, but confidence and resilience as well. I think that, and problem solving is another one. So for example, we could be, I don't know, just give them time to think about a situation. So I'm in a park once and I said, before we sit down, where do you think we should sit? You know, and she was like, oh, anywhere. And I said, yeah, but look around you, look at your, because we had some, for example, there's some trams that we front. I said, so do we go sit near them? Will it matter? And then I've been talked about all, and again, this is really important with young people, is to problem solve and talk about consequences. So, you know, like they don't necessarily think long term, young people, do they?
yeah, no.
It's like the here and now, inevitable. So I was like, okay, so we could sit with them, but, you know, what potentially could happen? You know, and it's the same with relationships. When she's been in a relationship, I'm like, she's really open with me, luckily, kind of probably too open. And I'm like, so, okay, so you could let that go. So potentially, say, for example, they have a, you know, drunken night out and he gets really like Larry with her. Says it's a one-off. I'm like, okay, so you could let that go. So what might happen in the future, you know? And I try and talk to her about, okay, you could, but then you could also minimize the risk here, because say you let that go, what happens maybe every time you go and that happens, you know? How could that affect your relationships? How could it, because she worked in a pub. I said, well, how could it affect your job? Because you could potentially lose your job. And it's just making her think. And she was just like, God, I never thought of it like that. And again, it was a bit like, again, it boils down back to mindfulness. It's taking that pause and paying attention, isn't it? Which is exactly what you're doing, which is amazing. I think it's so good. So hopefully I'm helping her. I don't know. The thing is, it's only me that helps her, and I don't live with her. I do feel like you need someone that you see quite a lot to reinforce that. And my mum and dad, they're still together now. They've been together since they were 18. Now they're well in their 60s, and they've drilled it into me. You know, be confident. You know, like when I, because I sometimes get told that I am a bit brutal, that I'm like, oh, you're opinionated. You know, like you said, media would tell you that's bad. Because my mum's made me so resilient, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I don't care. You know, if you don't like it, tough.
Right.
You know, that's your issue, not mine.
Right. But there's a lot of people that are just like, oh, I can't be seen as that person, you know, like it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. You know, like I don't want to be known as that person. I just want to be, you know, quiet and unassuming, and I just want to do my job, you know, like fly under the radar. And, you know, because a lot of people think that if you speak out, then it just kind of basically makes you a target, and nobody really wants to be a target. But you know what? I think we all need to be targets, and we all need to learn how to take the arrows and take the shots.
Yeah, life is not easy.
Oh God, no. It sure as hell isn't.
No.
So what do you think would be, if you could share one thing from that you've learned from all of the work that you've done, like what do you think would be the most important thing that you think people should know about awareness of domestic abuse?
One thing. I think it's a bit broad, but I think it's a really good life skill. And I think it probably boils down to resilience. So we have this word in England, resilience, where we talk about it all the time. But I do think it's the key thing. So if you are pretty resilient, you're going to have your wits about you. You know, you're not going to give a damn about those idiots in your life. You're going to just, what I call, let that shit go, basically. You're just not really going to be that bothered. And you're just going to be a bit more what I call savvy, which is a bit more like streetwise and a bit more in tune with what's going on, you know, just being a bit more mindful of people not being as authentic as they could be. And if you've got good resilience, you're going to have more confidence to go, don't talk to me like that. I remember meeting, because my resilience was all right as a kid, but most teenagers don't have the best confidence. And I was battling with an eating disorder and all sorts of problems. And then I remember meeting, so my first abusing partner, if you like, was when I was 13. I was with him from 18, on and off, 4 years, long time when you're a kid. And then I went off to university, and I didn't see him for a long time. And then I bumped into him on a night out when I was 26. And it was so funny. He was like, God, you've got really like cocky. And I was like, no, I haven't. Like, this is just the way I am. And it was so interesting for his reaction to how I just didn't care. And he was trying every trick in the book, you know, like the whole gaslighting, saying, you've really changed, you used to be so nice. And I was just like, you know what, I just don't put up with your shit anymore. I was like, I don't even know what I saw in you. I was like, what do you have to offer the world? In fact, I was probably more nasty to him, Crystal, if I'm really honest. You know, when someone's been so horrible to you in the past, you know, you haven't had that closure. So I let rip. I was just like, what do you offer this world? Like, not a lot. I was like, what's the point? You know, like, I was like, you know, you were pretty mean to me, and like, I'm just not putting up with it anymore. And he was just like, oh, you're just really up your own arse. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. I was like, in fact, I don't even know why I'm wasting my breath even talking to you, because you're like sucking the life out of me. I was like, see you later. And I generally thought it was funny. You know, my friends were, wow, you know, you've got confidence to do that. And it did bring up a few weird emotions, because, you know, I tried to kill myself over him. He was very controlling with my food, which wasn't great when I got food problems. And I really just wanted to give it to him. I just thought, you douche. But now, as well, as I've got older, I've realised there's always a reason for behaviour, you know. And I've also realised as well that resentment, hate, blame, it creates loads of cortisol in your body that actually can make you really weak with your immune system. So that's another reason why I let that shit go, because I used to be I used to have a lot of resentment, I used to have a lot of blame, I used to hate a lot. And then I got really bad arthritis last year. And when I looked into this arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease because of too much cortisol, basically, I thought, this is like, it's punishing me. So these people that have been really horrible to me, they don't care. I don't give a shit. I probably don't even enter their head. So I just thought the only person it's punishing is me. So then I really worked on the power of my thoughts, the letting it all go, because actually, you know, it's the past. Obviously, it's going to affect me to a point, because it does, right? Like you're human, but they're not going to ever make me ill again, because obviously it only affects me. So now I do that. You can see a little Buddha in the background, but you probably can't see what it says. And it says, let that shit go. That is literally, sorry for swearing, but that is my mantra for life. And that is about resilience. So if I could teach one thing, it's probably that, because then that will help you not just with domestic abuse, but it will help you to cope with life. Because unfortunately, we are going to meet douchebags, aren't we? But again, cognitive reframing, so trying to put a positive spin on things, you know, those douchebags that we meet, they make us, who are freaking awesome, by the way, they make us look really good. I mean, I know I'm all right, but when I meet an idiot, I think, well, you make me look really, really, really good, because you're such an idiot. Whereas I just think now, I think if everyone was awesome like me, I'd have to constantly up my game, and that'd be really hard work. So I think, you know, on a nice positive spin, you know, we need those idiots out there, because they make us look great.
I love that. That's awesome. And it reminds me of a saying that you will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger. Yeah. And that's exactly what happens, you know. So, you know, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. And
you're welcome. I've loved it.
The message, you know, I think it's something that's really important and a lot of people really need to hear. So, you know, I'm going to work hard for the next 30 days to try and, you know, get as many people's messages out there.
Be busy.
Yeah, I know. So that we can really work hard on, getting this, information out for everyone to see.
Yeah. You make sure you practice your own self-care though, Crystal,
Yeah.
because it's very draining, isn't it? I mean, I love talking about it, but there's like a balance, isn't there? So you make sure you look after yourself.
Right, right. No, I'm only going to do this for 1 month and then I'm done. Then I'm switching to anxiety. So, hey,
Oh, okay. Get in touch with me again. No loads about that.
awesome. But, I really, like I said, I really appreciate your time. And for everybody that's watching, this is Stacey Miller from Stacey Miller Consultancy in the UK. I will share her social media information in the comments and the video description. So, if you'd like to learn more about her and what she does and how she can help, you can find all of her information there, and, she'd be happy to talk to you. And, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Yes, thank you.
Good luck with it all. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.